Hey, welcome back to my annual top 10 movies of the year list. One thing I want to point out is that I'm a little bit flexible on when exactly a movie was released. A lot of times a movie gets like a limited release at film festivals and selected locations before having that wider release. One thing I've done this year is I put links to all the trailers to these movies in the description if you want to get a feel for what they're like. And I'm pretty sure that this video is going to be demonetized, so if you enjoy it, please click on the like button and let me know. Also, leave a comment with some of your favorite movies from 2021. I try to catch all the new releases every year, and by the end of the year, I usually have around 20 contenders for my top 10 list. But honestly, this year was a bit of a drought for good movies, at least ones that I liked. So I ended up with about 16 movies on my favorites list. But that's not to say that there weren't some great movies this year. In fact, my number one film is probably one of my favorite films of all time. As always, I want to point out that I'm typically drawn to smaller independent films, and I'm a huge horror movie fan, but surprisingly, there's only a few horror films on this year's list. Starting out with some honorable mentions, one of the very first films I saw this year was News of the World, starring Tom Hanks. It's a Western about a traveling newsreader who goes from town to town reading articles from newspapers to local townsfolk. He finds himself having to deliver a young orphaned girl to her aunt and uncle. It's a heartwarming story. I really had fun with Spontaneous, a love story about two teens who find each other while there's an epidemic of students spontaneously combusting. The kids in the school are literally popping. It's a funny and sweet story about taking chances with someone because tomorrow you may not be around. Shadow in the Cloud is about an undercover female pilot played by Chloe Grace Moretz who stows away on a bomber during World War II with an important secret mission. And there's kind of an evil presence on board. This is one of those just cheesy popcorn flicks that is so ridiculous and so over the top with insane action that it's just a blast to watch. If you just sit back and let it happen, I guarantee you'll have fun. Superhost was different. It's about a pair of YouTube travel vloggers who rent out Airbnbs and then vlog about their experiences. Only this time, the host seems a little too accommodating and kind of creepy. She really wants a good review. There's a lot of satire on YouTubers that I found pretty funny, and plus there's a little bit of a cameo by horror movie legend Barbara Crampton. Okay, coming in at number 10 on my favorite films of the year is Pig, starring Nicolas Cage in an Oscar-worthy performance. Nick Cage seems to have carved out a niche for himself, appearing in crazy roles and delivering outrageous performances. I actually love those movies where he goes just full-on Nick Cage, but it's easy to forget that he's a very talented actor who won a Best Actor award in 1996 for Leaving Las Vegas. In Pig, he portrays an isolated truffle hunter who lives alone with his only companion, a truffle foraging pig, until his world is turned upside down when the pig is stolen, prompting him to go on a quest to track down the thieves and find his beloved pig. You might think this sounds a little bit like John Wick, but the story is quite different. It slowly reveals itself in surprising ways, and Cage delivers a powerful and emotional performance about a man coming to terms with his past. Don't expect an action movie or a revenge movie, but rather a quiet, mostly introspective movie that'll probably cause you to tear up. But once in a while, a big budget movie captures my interest, and that's exactly what Free Guy did. It's about a bank teller who discovers that he's actually an NPC in an open world video game, kind of like Grand Theft Auto. It's got crazy fun action and tons of funny moments carried by Ryan Reynolds. I'm not even a gamer, but I got most of the references, and it was fun to see actual gaming YouTubers playing themselves. You can also think of this as kind of a rom-com in a way, but leaning more on the com. It's also a little bit like Groundhog Day. If you have kids, Free Guy would be a great family film to watch together. Lots of fun for everyone.
You ever looked around this town? Manufacturing drying up left and right. I don't need some professor of sociology quizzing me on life below the poverty line.
At the opposite end of the budget spectrum is Holler, the debut film from writer-director Nicole Riegel. It's a small-budget, slice-of-life movie shot in southeastern Ohio about a young woman living in an economically depressed ex-manufacturing town whose jobs have mostly dried up. She and her brother scrounge for scrap metal to sell to scrapyards to make ends meet in hopes of escaping the town and to hopefully get into the college that she's been accepted to. Jessica Barton delivers an authentic, low-key performance that pulls between the melancholy of living in poverty while still hanging on to a shred of hope for the future. I really like these kinds of movies when they're done right. It's a glimpse into a world that most of us never see. It's about the struggle to make a life in a hopeless situation while living with continual danger, sense of danger by this illegal scavenging. Holler is engaging, depressing, and maybe a little bit uplifting too.
Brothers and sisters, who can regale me and my queen with some myth?
If you like swords and sorcery movies, The Green Knight actually may not be for you, although it's not like Excalibur. Although it does tell the story of Sir Gawain, King Arthur's nephew, it's not the type of action-adventure story that you might expect. The mysterious Green Knight shows up at Christmas time and dares Sir Gawain to strike him with an axe. The catch is that in 1 year, Sir Gawain must visit the Green Knight and accept the same blow. The adventure unfolds as the arrogant Sir Gawain embarks on an odyssey to find the Green Knight in a year and to test his own courage. The Green Knight exists in a completely different world where danger exists in every forest. Not familiar with the source story, it's from a poem. I never knew where this story was headed, or even beheaded.
You know, I've learned something over this last year, which is pretty funny. I've learned that real-world, human-to-human tactile contact will kill you, and that all human interaction, whether it be social, political, spiritual, sexual, or interpersonal, should be contained in a much more safe...
So I guess Bo Burnham's Inside is technically a TV special, but this is my list, and I'm putting it at number 6. It's probably the most polarizing one, too. Fans of Bo Burnham seem to either think it's the most brilliant thing he's ever created, or they think he's jumped the shark. Bo Burnham, by the way, directed my favorite film of 2018, 8th Grade, and I love his comedy specials. Plus, it's pretty cool that he's a YouTuber who has made it big. And sticking with his YouTube roots, he wrote, directed, shot, wrote the songs, performed the songs, and edited Inside himself. This time over the course of a year while alone in 2020 while locked inside of his studio. As usual, his songs are poignant and catchy with biting commentary on the internet and social media. There are funny moments, but it's not the all-out funny comedy you might expect after seeing his stand-up shows. But this is one of the most amazing achievements of 2020. I think in the future people might be able to look at Inside just to get an idea of what 2020 was like for so many of us. The loneliness, the isolation, the frustration, the depression, the monotony, and all of that. This film is all about that and the process of documenting it. Inside is a pretty amazing achievement.
Afhældning. Daglig indtagelse af alkohol. Ja. Tilstræbt til konstant niveau på 0,5 promille. Med henblik på indsamling af...
Another Round is a Danish movie starring Mads Mikkelsen as a high school teacher who conducts an experiment with 3 other teachers to maintain a strict functional blood alcohol level on a daily basis and see how it affects their creativity, their social lives, and their work. As you might expect, the steady drinking starts off well, loosening them up and even improving their lives, but then starts affecting each man differently. Given that premise, Another Round is not a film about 4 guys becoming raging alcoholics or about the dangers of drinking. In fact, you may be a little surprised by the ending. Some viewers may see it as uplifting, but I felt a little sad and kind of disturbed by it. I think it speaks a lot about the culture of drinking, specifically in Denmark, but probably anywhere. There's some thought-provoking themes in Another Round, as well as some really funny and uplifting moments. Definitely worth checking out and deciding for yourself whether it's a pro-alcohol message or a cautionary tale.
So what brings you down then?
I'm studying London College of Fashion.
Room is on the top floor.
It's perfect.
Edgar Wright has directed some fantastic films, including Shaun of the Dead, Baby Driver, and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Last Night in Soho is just as amazing. Thomasin McKenzie plays a fashion design student who rents a small room in Soho. When she sleeps at night, she's mysteriously transported to the 1960s and into the body, sort of a fashion model played by Anya Taylor-Joy. The story develops into a 50-year-old unsolved murder mystery as the girl's visions become increasingly dark and upsetting. Is her room haunted? Last Night in Soho is a blend of sci-fi, horror, psychological thriller with some great acting and impressive cinematography and choreography, with some great 60s costumes and sets, and Matt Smith plays the villain. The movie is well-paced and intriguing, with a big twist at the end that, personally, I didn't see coming.
Date of birth?
Friday, 31st of December, 1937.
You're living with your daughter at the moment?
Yes, until she goes to live in Paris.
No, Dad, why do you keep going on about Paris?
You told me.
No, I didn't.
I'm sorry, Anne, you told me the other day. Have you forgotten? She's forgotten. Paris. They don't even speak English there.
Anthony Hopkins won the Best Actor Oscar for The Father, and deservedly so. In it, he plays Anthony, a man in his 80s succumbing to dementia. There have been other movies that take on the subject of Alzheimer's or dementia, but this is at a whole other level. It's painfully realistic because it's mostly presented from Anthony's point of view. Simple, everyday tasks become confused as he experiences mood swings and an unreliable perspective of his world. The movie even casts two different women to play his daughter. He doesn't understand who the strangers are who enter his flat, and he's always asking where his younger daughter is. The Father is a thoughtful, introspective film that'll make you appreciate life and your own mental acuity, as well as those around you. This may be Anthony Hopkins' best performance ever, but prepare to be devastated.
Butchery, sadism, murder.
A wave of depraved and corrupt horror video.
Confusing fiction with reality.
Every generation seems to have a boogeyman or scapegoat to blame for all kinds of things. In the past, it might have been witches, or more recently, heavy metal music, rap, Dungeons and Dragons, video games, books, social media. It just never ends. Censor is the debut film by writer-director Prano Bailey Bond. It takes place in 1980s England when the British government was responding to a nationwide hysteria surrounding VHS horror movies deemed too extreme for people to watch. Mostly low-budget movies were either heavily censored or outright banned, placed on the infamous Video Nasties list. Big studios, of course, had the pull to release whatever they wanted. The question a lot of people had in the 1980s was, if horror movies could corrupt people and drive them to violence, how exactly were the censors able to watch them without going mad? The answer was a classist one, literally that the censors were educated people and that the lower class, uneducated people were incapable of handling what they saw. The movie centers around Enid, a government censor who takes her job very seriously and genuinely sees herself as protecting people. One day, while screening a certain low-budget horror movie, she sees an actress who she believes might be her long-lost sister who's been missing since childhood. So Enid goes on a quest to find her and hopefully rescue her sister. Censor is brilliant. It plays with aspect ratios, and the films within the film are shot on film and look seriously legit. I've watched a lot of interviews with Prano Bailey Bond, and it's clear she has a passion for horror movies and really understands the genre and its history. She absolutely nails this movie, creating a moody atmosphere and sticking the landing. The ending is horrifying. The acting is top-notch, and I love the meta commentary of a horror film about horror films.
Do
presence graces the air, and soon everyone will see.
My favorite movie of the year is Saint Maud, another outstanding feature debut, this time by writer-director Rose Glass. I was blown away the first time I saw it, and I've watched it several times since. The story is about Maud, played by Welsh actor Morfydd Clark, a home hospice nurse who begins a new job caring for Amanda, a famous dancer choreographer who's now dying of cancer. We know from the very first scene that Maud has some recent trauma and a troubled past, but having recently found God, she finds purpose in her life by trying to save the soul of non-believer Amanda before she dies. Maybe this is Maud's path to salvation and absolution from her own past. Saint Maud gets darker and more disturbing as the film progresses and concludes with one of the most shocking endings I've ever seen. It's a gloomy, depressing movie with quiet, outstanding acting by its two leads. The film explores the question of mental illness and how we seem to agree that a person who hears voices in their head might need some psychiatric help, but we tend to dismiss it and not offer help when the voice they claim to hear is God speaking to them. It's a film about isolation, loneliness, and a search for something greater. Maud is a person with absolutely no one in her life to lean on or ask for support. There's so many amazing filmmaking touches giving us clues into Maud's psyche, such as when God, in the form of a cockroach, speaks to Maud in Welsh. This was actually Morfydd Clark's own voice, which they pitch shifted down, so maybe that was just her talking to herself? I'm really excited to see the direction horror movies have taken in the last few years, and I can't wait to see what Prono Bailey Bond and Rose Glass do next. That's my list. Thanks for joining me again this year, and don't forget to let me know some of your favorite movies of 2021.